Yesterday, Germany's Vice-Chancellor declared, in my opinion, the negotiations with the United States have de facto failed, even though nobody's really admitting it. And with that, Sigmar Gabriel said what a lot of people have been thinking for a while, that the TTIP free trade deal between the EU and the United States is in difficulties. The draft deal has attracted significant opposition in Europe, while both main contenders for the US presidency are also against it. Before I came on air, I spoke with Brian Hayes. He's the Fine Gael MEP for Dublin and a supporter of TTIP, and I asked him about Sigmar Gabriel's comments and did he agree that the deal is now dead in the water?
Well, I don't agree with him that TTIP is dead in the water. I don't think his comments are all that surprising. Mr. Gabriel is Vice-Chancellor, but more importantly, he's the leader of the Social Democrats, and the current German government is made up of the Christian Democrats and the Social Democrats. There are many people on the left who have legitimate concerns about TTIP, and I think he's articulating those concerns in, 10 months away from a German federal election. The German election will be sometime next year, 2017, likely to be around September. And his party aren't doing well in the polls. And I think he's reaching out to people who have concerns about TTIP. There are a group of people who have genuine concerns, and there are some people who are ideologically, implacably opposed to any kind of trade deal with the United States. And I think he's just articulating that. So no, I don't think it's dead. I certainly think it will be a difficult task to get TTIP through before the German election, the French election, which is due next year, and of course the upcoming US election, which, as you know, Mary, the outcome, Mr. Trump is implacably opposed to TTIP. It's as if the hard left and the hard right have come together on this issue, and those of us in the centre ground who are trying to get jobs, investment and growth to the European Union have to defend why we believe it's in Europe's interest to have a new trade deal with the United States.
But you know, Brian Hayes saying it might be a difficult task to progress it at this stage, that really is a bit of an understatement. 3 years, 14 rounds of talking, nothing agreed. It seems the EU is in disarray about it. Britain is now involved in Brexit, and the Americans, the two presidential candidates, seem to be opposed as well. So where do you take negotiations like this?
Well, I don't think anyone ever thought, Mary, that the negotiations would come to an end at the end of 2016. That was the initial objective. It's normally a 3-year process, but no one ever thought that they would come to an end because they are tied into the electoral cycle. And even if TTIP is not if there's not an agreement on TTIP over the next year or 2 years, all of those issues remain. The questions are, how do we provoke additional investment and exports between the United States and Europe and vice versa? Gordon Brown said something very interesting in the European Parliament just before summer. He said, if you take the 8-year period from 2000 to 2008, and Lehman Brothers happened, to 2008 to now, what we've seen in the last 8 years is a growth in world trade of less than half of what it was in the 8-year period. And one of the drags for the real economy in Europe, especially in Europe, is this lack of export capacity. So Europe needs this more than the Americans do, if the truth be told. Their economy is in a better state. Their unemployment is lower than ours. Their GDP growth is higher than ours. We need this in Europe. But we only need it on the basis of a deal that's good for people in Europe. And if it takes longer to do this, all those issues remain on the table. And I think ultimately some deal will be done. It may not be the deal that people had initially thought, nor is it actually going to be the deal that was done within a 3-year period. But at some stage, I think Europe will come to some new agreement with the United States.
Clearly, though, at this stage, everything is a sticking point. Everything is being battled over. But when you look at the wide range of issues that are down for discussion and negotiation, is it likely that it's the regulation issues that are proving more of a barrier than the tariffs?
Yeah, I think that's probably the case. One of the issues that Europe has been very strong about is this question of regulation. We want to make it very, very clear that we're not moving to a US standard when it comes to a whole range of issues to do with industry and trade. The Americans do understand that. And it's how you actually get an agreement while also understanding the differences that apply from the United States' perspective and Europe's perspective. But I mean, the key issue for Europe is this. How do we grow our economy? We represent, in the 28 member states of the European Union, 7% of the world's population. less than 20% of the world's GDP, and 50% of all social spending in the world happens in the 28 member states of the European Union. We're getting older. We have got to become more competitive, and more importantly, we've got to trade our way out of the crisis that we have gone through for the last 8 years. So we need to have a better understanding with the United States, which is our key trading partner and ally. Now, take the likes of Ireland. In the only independent study that's been done, it's been very clear that we as a country, given the number of US businesses based here, the number of key industry US businesses that are based here, we can see our growth of about 4% in exports, investment of about 2%, wage increase of about 2%, and somewhere between 500,000 new jobs if the full potential of TTIP is realised, if it is realised. So Ireland as an economy, because of its connection with the United States and the number of US businesses here, is very well fitted and very well able to deal with this challenge if there is a positive outcome to this round. But I can't tell you when that round is going to come to an end. No one in the European Parliament can. And of course, the key issue is also this. If and when it does come to an end, it will be a matter for each of the member state parliaments to ratify it. So there is this double lock. In the first instance, the European Parliament must accept it, and then each of the member states of the European Union. So there's that double lock there for citizens to realise that we will only accept a good deal for EU consumers and for EU industry.
But you can't tell me either what's really going on, because these negotiations happen in secret. At the very least, is it time to be more transparent?
Well, we've had an awful lot more transparency in this trade round than was the case before, Mary. We now have a system where people can see the documentation. Admittedly, much more has come from the European Union than it has from the Americans. It is not a great surprise that in any trade round between two large blocs, as the United States on one side and the European Union on the other, that a lot of the net issues are left to the end for some all-encompassing deal. Are we some time away from that deal? Yes, in my view. And irrespective of the outcome of the elections next year in Europe and in the United States this year, we still have to get back to the table and work on a better understanding between the US and the EU, because that's the only way to drive a trade agenda. And no one can tell you at this stage how long this will take. That's why we've got to continue to work at it to get the best deal we can for the Irish people.
That was the Fine Gael MEP, Brian.